Imagine walking through your front door after an ordinary day, your mind occupied with nothing more profound than what to make for dinner. That was me. I let the door click shut behind me, grateful to leave the city's noise outside. I dropped my keys on the table, shrugged my bag off my shoulder, waiting for her usual hello, her familiar smile. But the house was silent. Not peaceful, hollow. She stood in the living room, stiff as stone, arms crossed so tightly her knuckles blanched. Her eyes weren't the warm, familiar ones I'd woken up next to for 12 years. They were cold, distant, like she'd already stepped out of our life and into another. She didn't ease into the conversation. No greeting. No gentle lead-in. She inhaled once, sharply, and delivered the sentence that split my life cleanly into a before and an after. I'm moving out. I've signed a lease. It's over. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The words hit like a punch I never saw coming. My thoughts exploded in every direction. Why? What happened? Did I do something? Is there someone else? We can fix this. The panic crawled up my chest, desperate and loud. I felt myself reaching for the usual script: anger, disbelief, bargaining, pleading. I could already see how this scene was supposed to play out. She was ready for it too. Her whole body looked braced for impact, as if she'd spent days preparing for my meltdown. She was armed with explanations and defenses for a fight I didn't even know was scheduled. And in the middle of all that chaos in my head, something else cut through, calm and chillingly clear. What if I don't play the part she expects? What if I don't beg? What if I let her go? The silence between us thickened. Confusion flickered across her face, the first crack in her perfectly rehearsed composure. She was expecting thunder, and my stillness unsettled her more than any shouting could have. I took a slow breath. Looked at the woman I loved, the woman who had already walked away from me in her heart. And I made a decision. I gave one small nod. Okay. The word floated between us, simple and final. Her eyes widened, barely but enough. That's all you're going to say? I looked around the living room, at the pictures, the couch, the little artifacts of a life that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. A museum of us. I'm not going to fight you, Sarah, I said softly, though my insides were anything but calm. If this is truly what you want, if you've made up your mind, then I'll respect that. I love you. And because I love you, if you think your happiness is somewhere else, I won't stand in the way. Her arms slowly fell to her sides. This wasn't the battle she'd prepared for. None of her defenses had anything to push against. I have movers coming tomorrow, she stuttered. All right, I replied. Do you need help packing? That question shattered her remaining composure. Her chin trembled as she looked away. And no, I'll manage. I nodded again. I'm going to order dinner. Want anything? She just shook her head and slipped upstairs, to the spare room not ours. The rest of the night passed in a strange, fragile quiet. The next morning the movers arrived. I made them coffee. Held doors open. Helped lift boxes. I felt like a spectator in my own home, watching a version of my life being dismantled piece by piece. And I watched Sarah. The longer she looked at me, the more disoriented she became. She kept searching my face for anger, bitterness, grief, anything she could use to justify her leaving. But I gave her only steady acceptance. When the last box was loaded, she stopped at the door holding her copy of the house keys. The final ritual. The final line of the script she'd written. I guess, this is goodbye, she murmured. I took the keys without letting our fingers touch. Take care of yourself, Sarah. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say more, then closed it again. She simply nodded and walked out. The door clicked shut, and I was alone. The house suddenly felt enormous and empty, the silence a weight on my chest. I stood there a long time before finally sitting on the bottom step of the stairs, letting the truth settle around me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just let it wash over me, the grief, the shock, the uncertainty. But underneath all that pain, there was a faint spark. I had made a choice. In a moment where I had almost no control, I had taken the one thing still mine, my reaction, my dignity, myself. I didn't give her the collapse she'd been preparing for. I didn't let her turn me into the villain of her story. I gave her grace, and that gave me power. We didn't reconcile. She didn't come back. The divorce papers arrived, and I signed them without argument. But here's the twist I never expected. That tiny ember inside me grew. By not fighting for her, I'd accidentally fought for myself. I reconnected with people I'd drifted from. I rediscovered old passions. I started remembering who I was outside of us. And months later, a mutual friend told me something surprising. Sarah was struggling. She had expected a dramatic ending, something fiery and loud. But my calm had forced her to sit with the consequences of her choice alone. No anger to fuel her justification. Only the cold aftermath. And that's when I realized the real lesson. Sometimes the strongest response to heartbreak isn't fury or desperation. It's quiet, steady acceptance. It's looking at the end of what you knew and saying simply, okay. Because that's when you discover that it wasn't the end of your world, just the end of a chapter. And you're still here. Still capable. Still able to build something new.